Azizur Rahman, thank you very much. You'll be turning around facing the wall. Anyone else want to talk? Right, for part two of this evening, I'm going to pass the microphone over to those who are sick of my voice, not me, of course, because I don't get sick of my voice. We're going to introduce you to Saida. Saida is going to chair the next part of the event and introduce another guest, and after that you will all be purchasing books from this corner over here, where we have the lovely Sanam and the lovely Kozri. Well, this is the best we've got tonight, and loads of other books. So we'll get some signed books from our guest evening. So without further ado, Saida, please.
Okay. Thank you, Grace. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Most of you will remember me from last time when I hijacked George Galloway's event. But this time round, I'm actually going to be really quiet because you've got a really interesting speaker. But for those of you that don't know me, I run Trescom, which is a local training company, and we do vocational courses. We deliver these all over the country, and I was really pleased when I heard what Nazir was saying, because I believe passionately that as Muslims, if we want to create our mark in terms of society, we must make sure we deliver services, we must deliver activities. Every social action we must do must be for the wider society, because that was the way of Muslims, of original Muslims. Now, I'm not going to talk about myself, even though I've done my bit now, because I'm just trying to compete with Idris here. I want to introduce you to Christiana, because I think she's got a very interesting story, and her stories, although of an international nature, it actually applies to a lot of us on a local and personal level. I wish I could tell you loads of things about her, but I can tell you that she used to work for MTV. Her books are from MTV to Mecca, and she had fried mozzarella sticks last night for dinner. But beyond that, I'm not going to leave you waiting for your dinner for Christiana's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saida. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I greet you all in the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It's a great pleasure to be back here in Bradford. I had such a good time with you, I think it was 2 years ago, at a Mosaic event. Was it Mosaic? No,
it was PMI
event together with Strategic Institute or something like that, and it was such a warm event. And everybody said, oh, you must come back, please come back. And I said, I'd love to come back, hopefully with the book. So, alhamdulillah, it's worked out. I'm back. I'm so happy to celebrate the launch of my English book with you today on this special Eid celebration. It's also festive here, and it's just a lovely venue. Thank you, Javed, for hosting us all. And Saida, thank you for your great introduction. We have a sort of a spiritual connection, because when I think of things, she sends them on the email every night. I'm in her Hadith club, and she is my great inspiration. I always look forward to her email messages. If you want to join her club, it's highly recommended. You get spiritual inspiration on a daily basis or nightly basis. She's a night owl, so am I. So at 1:30 we have emails flying back and forth. But apart from that, yes, we already celebrated my book in London. We had 2 events, one at the House of Commons and one at Momo's. And the best thing about it was that it was a mixed crowd. At Momo's especially, we had Bob Geldof turn up, other pop stars, filmmakers, friends of Imran, aristocrats, society people, filmmakers, and Muslim movers and shakers. And everybody, Liz Jones from the Daily Mail, Sarah Joseph, the CEO of ML, and Asad Ahmed, the BBC presenter, and there was really a buzz in the atmosphere, and everybody had a great time. And and that is what I really loved. And people were saying, normally all these kind of people who were, would not be in the same room celebrating together. And Aziz was playing, a great artist from Manchester, and so it works. Multiculturalism can work. We just need to make it happen. So I also fully agree with our previous speaker. Just get out there, do things, make things happen, and I'll try and tell you when I try to do that throughout my journey in my life. So basically, some of you may know, my book was a difficult birth, especially, well, the English book was, because I wrote it, well, the German book came out in 2009, and it took me 3 years for the English book to come out. I wrote to so many publishers, to so many agents, and received nothing but rejections. Or they ignored me altogether. So the best thing was a rejection letter. I went twice to the Frankfurt Book Fair and to the London Book Fair with my marketing material, and again, nothing but rejections. Now, the second time I went to, trekking all around these 8 halls in Frankfurt, it's massive, that book fair, on 3 floors. Finally, the last stand in the English hall, I was absolutely exhausted and just kind of looked, and then a man jumped out and he said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Well, you don't happen to do memoirs, do you?" And he said, yes, we do, just please come in. And it turned out the man had a soft spot for German women. But not only that, he loved God. He was the son of a vicar, and we immediately connected on the spiritual level. And then I told him about the story and so on, and he didn't mind that my book, was a path to God for Islam. He just loved the idea that with my book also I'm putting faith back on the map. I'm showing how faith is such an important tool of transformation for yourself and for the society around it, and how faith pulls you through every time, when you have difficulties and so on. So it's a book, really a call to God, and so he called fire immediately, and he made sure that I find, that he brought it into Arcadia, which is a small independent publisher. And then I found another Muslim publisher as a co-publisher. And then so I had 2 publishers, and none of them had the finances. So I was asked to speak at a community event of FIRD. FIRD is a Pakistani think tank, actually. And I had absolutely no time to trek all the way there, and finally, well, I did it. I said, okay, fine, I'll take the time out and do it. And then they asked me, so how is it going? And I said, yeah, I've got 2 publishers, no finances, it's not going anywhere. And they said, but Christiana, we've told you, we believe in your project, we would support you. And I said, well, did you really mean it? And he said, yes, of course, what do you need? So then, they put the budget together, Andy put the budget together, the man from the Frankfurt Book Fair, and they financed the startup costs, and now, once they will of course receive it all back. So they made it happen, all together. We had a lot of angels working on this book, really, for it to finally see the light of day. And I'm only telling you this to encourage you. If you are faced with rejections and no's, don't take no for an answer. If you believe in something, keep at it, persevere, and just carry on, because it's when you have that fire in you, it doesn't matter how hard you work or how long you've got to, carry on. One day, if it's meant to be, it will see the light of day. But you may wonder, why did I have this burning desire to write this book? Despite all these challenges. Well, it was because of what happened to me when I became a Muslim in 1995. At the time, I was an award-winning TV presenter. In fact, I was working for MTV Europe, interviewing rock stars for a living. Mick Jagger gave a prize to Annie Lennox, hung out with Seal, Sinead O'Connor, also met Elizabeth Hurley, stayed at her place in LA, all these kind of people. Hosted so many live music shows with thousands of teenagers, once in front of 70,000 people. That was, the biggest audience I've ever had. Just worked under high pressure, traveled a lot. We had red carpet treatment wherever we went. Really lived a high life, and had a dream job, as you could imagine. Any young person would consider this as a dream job, and I was really very fortunate to have had this job. But despite all of that, there was some kind of emptiness inside. I didn't truly feel satisfied. There was something missing, and I didn't know what it was. I thought it was love missing. But actually, in retrospect, I realized that no human being could have fulfilled that emptiness. But anyway, I'll tell you more about that later. When in '95, I also had a show on German national TV, and when we celebrated the 100th episode, all the big wigs came flying in, congratulated me. You wrote German TV history, with this great youth show, etc., etc. And lots of journalists were there. And one journalist asked the question, "Have you already converted for your boyfriend?" And I was startled by this question, because I never had admitted I had a boyfriend because my boyfriend happened to be Muslim, and you know there's no boyfriend and girlfriend in Islam, it's either marriage or nothing. So to respect his culture, I always said I was single. And anyway, the boyfriend was Imran Khan, and I admitted, I said, no, so I hadn't converted yet, but I'm a Muslim at heart. This was in '95, it was 3 years after I'd begun studying. And that little comment practically finished my entertainment career. Certainly my TV career in Germany. A very negative press campaign followed. Has she lost the plot? Is she now going to present her TV show from behind the burqa? Is she supporting terrorism? And so many more. Every day I was getting faxes, with new horrible articles about me, terrible I was, etc. And then I was invited to go on a chat show to discuss Islam. They started this chat show with images of women in black, in burqas, men screaming Allahu Akbar with Kalashnikovs in their hands, And Christiana, our MTV presenter, what do you like about Islam? And as soon as I said Islam means peace, and it's this inner, whatever I said, something nice, right next, the next person was supposed to speak an Islamophobe, of course. So I was debating against these a bunch of Islamophobes on this chat show, and it was a setup, of course. And the result was that they sacked me from my youth show. I hadn't done anything. I hadn't even put on hijab, and that was obviously very traumatic. So, so I was, it was a very tumultuous time, and during this time, then Imran had also broken up with me for no apparent reason, and during this, afterwards, I was ready. I wanted to feel the spiritual fruits I was reading about. I carried on studying Islam, and I was ready, actually. I converted to Islam in '95 during all these during this tumultuous time. And the agents I had at the time, TV agents and event hosting agents, they said, if you ever want to work again in Germany, keep quiet about Islam. Don't mention it. If a company like Mercedes or any big company knows you're a Muslim, they won't hire you again. So I needed to work, obviously, so I did keep quiet. And when I was asked on chat shows, what about Islam? I said, I believe in the truth of all religions. I kept it a little bit vague out of fear. And despite all of that, nothing even really truly worked out. All my attempts were quite futile. But then also, of course, privately, I was itching to speak out. I was longing to say something. I'm a communicator. I'm a journalist by heart, a TV presenter, and reading this negative media all the time against Islam and depicting it in such a different way to how I, discovered it for myself. I was longing to speak out. But then actually, a sheikh, one of my spiritual teachers who I found, advised me, and he said, if you, your fervor that you have, put it first into bettering your deen. Everything else will come, Study your religion, you'll practice it, internalize it. And in retrospect now, I'm very, very happy. So I studied it since 92. Now we're 2012, and only now am I properly out there. In fact, in the last few years, talking about Islam also in the media. And now when people attack me or debate me on Islamic issues, I'm quite solid. I've learned a lot enough to be able to not get tripped up and booted out. So it's everything happens for a reason. Alhamdulillah, I learned that. So of course, also mind you, when I experienced all this negativity, it was in 1995, before 9/11, before 7/7, before the cartoons. So a lot was going on already there then, and of course these events only heated the situation, only made it worse. So in any case, 10 years later, I went on Hajj, alhamdulillah, and afterwards a German journalist asked me, can I do an interview, XMTV, now a Muslim. I had refused for 9 years, but for some reason, I now had the courage. I was 40 years old, and for some reason I had the courage. I said, yes, fine, I'll do an interview. And actually, it was reported very positively in the press. Enough time had passed, the grass had grown over, and Christiana Bakker had been on Hajj, XMTV presenter, and now she's doing this and that. And then more positive articles followed, and suddenly a book agent contacted me in Germany. Wouldn't you like to write your story in a book? So that's how the original German book came about. And I thought, yes, I will accept, because it's important. I don't want to be on my deathbed one day and to say, what have I done, what have I contributed? Because I think, hopefully, my voice as a European woman at the forefront of the entertainment business, I converted to Islam and found my happiness in Islam that I had not experienced before when I was living that high life. I mean, there must be something to it. It can't be all bad. And and so really, to show that, I'm only one of the many women nowadays who convert to Islam for good reasons and not for marriage. And I'd like to contribute through my book, to the debate in general. Where was I? Yeah, of course. And then I'm not only that. I would like, not with my book, not only to inspire born Muslims, hopefully, inshallah, to faith, back to faith, and perhaps also to have a fresh perspective on everything. Not so much, not shall I say, tainted is perhaps the wrong word, but coloured with cultural connotations. But from someone who discovers everything afresh, like a baby. I had to learn everything from scratch. But also to bring faith, into the wider debate. That's why Andy Hayward was so excited about the book, because generally in our secularized society, faith is marginalized nowadays. Prayers are forbidden in schools. People of faith, no matter what faith, are regarded as a little bit backwards and not quite so intelligent and so on. So I'm hoping that, and in fact I believe all of us, Muslims here in the audience, we must join the Christians and the Jews in this general debate about faith, and work together for the common good, work together for respecting each other's faiths and for bringing faith back into the public sphere. I mean, what a wonderful tool it is to find your inner peace, to recharge, to fight depression, to transform yourself and the society around you for the better. There's one gentleman in the audience who does spiritual healing. What a wonderful thing to recover from traumas and so on through spiritual healing. I mean, this is all very important stuff. So and of course with my book I'm trying to dissolve some of those prejudices against Islam, and take the reader by the hand to combat these misconceptions and show what it really means to be a Muslim, show the beautiful values of our religion. Now, if someone had asked me in, say, 91 or 92, or told me that I would become a practicing Muslim one day, when I was working on MTV, I would have thought they must be absolutely mad. I was so far away from a life of faith, say, let alone Islam. But God works in mysterious ways, and He knows what He's doing. And as my first Islam teacher, He didn't send me a long-bearded imam, no offense to people who wear beards, but a handsome sports star, cricket hero Imran Khan at the time, who introduced me to Islam. Very strange, but who are we to question God's choices? And Imran didn't ram religious rulings down my throat, but he taught philosophy. And I had always liked philosophy. He mentioned, by the way, I didn't know who he was. I was German and I wasn't raised with cricket, so I had no idea he had just won the World Cup for Pakistan. And also he knew nothing about music or MTV. So it was a good, and we met not as equals, but sort of. So on our first date, I arrived in an Alaya mini dress, and then he asked me to keep on my coat all night because we were going out and I was knowing him, and in his culture, women don't show flesh, and women and men dress modestly. So in the entertainment business, it was all about, if you've got it, flaunt it, show your assets. But here I was now beginning for the first time to learn the concept of modesty, And it was a little unusual at first, but as we debated this idea and he challenged me on it, I began to see the point. I think it makes absolute sense. Why should a woman with her body advertise car tires, cigarettes, alcohol, you name it? any kind of product, that's degrading, you know, and I much prefer the idea that a woman is covered, still nicely dressed, and respected for her personality and for her soul, for her mind, for her piety, you know, for her actions. So, you know, it was, Imran challenged me in so many different ways and really not shattered my belief system, but challenged it certainly. And, you know, and I began to think, it was a bit like a wake-up call, all our discussions. And he talked to me about spirituality, the fact that we all have a soul, and the soul needs nurturement like the body. I didn't even know until then that I had a soul. And I think one manifestation of this neglect was the fact that in my dark moments, and I did have dark moments in this high life, there was only one thing: retail therapy. So you go shopping as a woman. But the pleasure you get from a new handbag or a new dress, of course, is only temporary. And, you know, so I learned about the fact that there is this other dimension to life beyond the material world. And I was curious about it, you know. I actually had always had an interest in it. In fact, even at school, I liked philosophy. But then I had a fun-loving side as well. And the first years of my life, my teenage twins, the fun-loving side had taken over, but that philosophical side, and also, in fact, interest in spirituality was completely neglected. In fact, at the radio station, I started out as a radio journalist. I did a lot of reports on the unseen, on mystical issues, say about the occult amongst children, about witchcraft. And I was always interviewing the Institute for Paranormal Studies and priests and this and that, you know. So there was this, just in retrospect, you know, there was this interest there, but completely unfocused. So now, suddenly, I began to understand a little bit more, slowly, about the spiritual dimension, and really I was fascinated. And the other thing is, it was such a surprise to discover so many commonalities between Islam and Christianity. You know, suddenly I learned that Adam was part of Islam, a prophet in Islam. Abraham, Moses, Jesus, prophets of Islam. Mary is one of the most respected and revered women in Islam. People don't know this at all. So that was a bit of a revelation, and this is such big common ground. I mean, Islam really is a continuation almost of Christianity and Judaism. It's God speaking the same message. I bet you the majority of the people out there have no idea about this. So we need to tell them, you know, when they ask questions. So then Imran invited me to travel to Pakistan. Not exactly a tourist destination, but certainly an adventure, I thought. My mother was very worried, but, you know, and I had no idea, obviously, about the monumental consequences this journey would have. You know, and my first trip, I'm writing about all my trips to Pakistan in my book, most of them anyway. First one was an incredible journey, and one that left me with many unforgettable memories. I love Pakistan, you see, and I write about Pakistan with a lot of fondness. I trekked through awe-inspiring snow-capped mountains, slept beneath the stars, and spent time with simple people that made a greater impression on me with their warmth and their generosity and their hospitality, and above all their faith in God, than most of those that I'd met in the entertainment business. First time in my life also, I discovered how much fun you can have without alcohol. You know, and subconsciously I paid attention how I was treated as a woman in Pakistan, and indeed how Pakistani women were treated. And I can really say everybody was polite to me, and kind and hospitable and respectful, and treated me as a sister, addressed me as a sister. So no complaints there. We went on some amazing trekking trips in the Karakoram Mountains. We passed Gilgit, the northernmost outpost of the British, and Hunza, where the anti-aging apricots come from. Beautiful areas, Skardu, you know, I just really had such a great time. Amazing, the nature. I don't even know if you can go to any of these places anymore at the moment. And as we climbed higher up, I was even in Waziristan, Peshawar, etc. As we climbed higher up the mountains on that first trip, we came across very basic two-story houses made from a mixture of mud and wood. The mountain people there lived on the first floor, and the cows, the animals, were on the ground floor. They didn't have heating, they didn't have electricity or satellite dishes or running water. And the animals worked as a natural heating system so that the body heat would travel up and keep the people warm. You know, I'd never seen anything like it, and this poverty filled me with sadness. But when we stopped and we walked through the villages, through these small little, you know, through the streets, people came out of the houses with radiant eyes and offered us a plate full of walnuts and apricots with Bismillah, in the name of God. And I was really touched, you know, by the dignity of these people and their generosity despite their poverty. You know, and they didn't complain or feel. I mean, it was really made me think, because here I was stressing around the Western world, often being annoyed for no real reason that counts. And here these people had such a different life, and yet they had such dignity and managed to be hospitable, you know. And anywhere we stopped, Imran was surrounded, his jeep was surrounded immediately by lots of people. And a lot of them came and said, you know, pressed a few rupees into his hand, this is for the hospital. You know, and then he always kept the bag with money separate, this is for the hospital. And he said, it's the poor people who are building this hospital, not the rich. And he was touched by everybody who wanted to be part of, you know, the hospital effort. And this is something I noticed, it's actually that friendship and faith, how when you do something for God, how Muslims come, even if they don't know you personally, they come to your aid and they help. It's one of the most beautiful aspects, you know, in the community that I've now also experienced. On my trip throughout the north in Manchester, we had all these angels helping, you know, driving me here, there and everywhere, picking up books, this, that, you know, incredible, organizing the events. Yasmin is in the audience, she's one of our angels from the north. And, you know, it's just so touching. You don't experience this normally in the world out there, certainly not in the entertainment business, which is very ego-driven, as you know. So it was compassion and action that I first of all encountered in Pakistan. My frequent travels through your beautiful country affected me deeply and made me reevaluate my life. I began to question the superficiality of showbiz, which I was part of, and the idea that sex sells, and, you know, the way that women use allure to get places. And since my introduction really to Eastern culture, to Islam, to Pakistan, something had affected me deeply, and it began to grow. I couldn't do anything about it. So I kept reading books. Imran gave me a lot of books to read. We debated, you know, I researched. I spoke to so many people, ordinary people, scholars in Pakistan, in London, everywhere. And of course, you know, seeing a European ask questions about Islam, everybody volunteered, you know, all the information. It was really a joy. And also traveling in Pakistan, I admired very much the beautiful traditional architecture, the Badshai Mosque, you know, the stunning Mughal monuments, other mosques, the Shalimar Gardens. And I thought, something great must be behind these monuments, you know. These are the fruits of our faith, really, of Islamic faith. So, and what I liked also so much, or what I still love about Islamic art, is that it's symbolic, deeply symbolic. It depicts heavenly realities. Islamic architecture is a mirror of the unseen, and it's just beautiful. And I think we must preserve it. We must really, I mean, one thing that did sadden me is going to, you know, those places in Pakistan, a lot of them are dilapidated. In Morocco, the same. You know, we really must try and preserve this, our world heritage, and certainly not allow anybody to bomb it. And so it was that Islamic art that touched me, but also the Islamic music. Imran was always playing Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, and then translating the lyrics. And once you understand the lyrics, they touched me deeper than any pop song I heard on MTV. And it was really those lyrics that opened my heart and mind to the culture and religion of Islam at the very, very beginning. And as you know, some of those qawwalis are Sufi poetry, songs from hundreds of years ago, and you know, in praise of love, in praise of holy people, in praise of the beloved, that then turns into the ultimate beloved, God. And I suppose you can say, in a way, that's my story. I found faith, I found the old, higher love through earthly love, which was then taken away. And but higher love lasts. That's the good thing. So it was really the spiritual dimension. That was the reason why I finally converted. Eventually, there came this point in time when I realized Islam is not an academic exercise. If I want to taste the fruits I was reading about, and and feel this inside faith, and bring God into my life and purify myself, there was only one way: get a prayer mat and start practicing. And so my reason for my conversion was spiritual. I was intellectually convinced. I had these amazing encounters with beautiful people that really made me think. And but the reason to convert was eventually spiritual. And just lastly, before I end, after my first trip to Pakistan, very shortly later, like a week or so later, I went to LA to the MTV Video Music Award, which was a gift from my boss at the time. Thank you. So imagine, I've just been trekking in the mountains, with these amazing people. I borrowed my first Shabbat kameez, and suddenly a week later I was in LA in a traffic jam full of stretched limos, going to the venue, and everybody, all the girls there, and mini skirts, as short as belts, everything sticking out, and trout pouts, and everything so fake. And guys were wearing dark sunglasses late at night, and then I kept thinking back to Pakistan and how people were sincere and authentic, and and dressed so differently. Here everything was fake in LA, and even at the Vanity Fair after show party, a film director told me, if you want to make it in Hollywood, natural is not an option. You have to get operations, and and that never appealed to me. So it was really a fascinating journey, and I'm so grateful for the introduction to Islam, for this gift of faith. And I write in my book about the spiritual dimension that I continue to explore, about my adventures in the Muslim world, Hajj, travels to Morocco, Turkey, Pakistan, etc. And also my challenges that I faced, and how it was then faith that pulled me through every single time. And I'd like to end with one of the poems by Bulleh Shah, which sort of signifies my spiritual quest at the time. You read so many books to know it all, yet you failed to ever read your heart at all. You rush to holy shrines to play a part. Would you dare enter the shrine of your heart? You are quick to attack the evil one, yet pride is a battle you have not won. You grab for a star you can control, yet fail to grasp the light in your soul. May we all find ways to grasp the light in our souls, and this is really what I pray. Thank you very much.